Welcome to the Disrupt Education Podcast. Yeah, I kind of did a robot there. We were talking about the robot. One of my colleagues had a daddy-daughter dance, and I was like, "You're going to do the robot?" He said, "No."
I mean, speaking of school dances, our
Right. Bingo.
most recent guest brought up how, you know, school and anything outside of it is, and working with people on the outside of school is like this awkward high school, or I'm sorry, eighth
Eighth
grade, not
grade
even high
dance.
school,
Yeah.
eighth grade dance. And if I feel like that's something most people can remember, or you've seen it in a movie, being a middle schooler, you can remember that awkward age. And you know in the disrupt education world, I think sometimes it can feel like this very awkward, clunky
Yep.
thing to be pursuing. And so it was refreshing to talk to Corey,
Yeah.
our guest from last week, about making it a little less awkward, and looking at what are different education pathways, particular the 9th through 12th grade level.
Mhm.
And really this is a conversation that came out of a previous podcast episode that we did with Nate Clayberg back in early 2023. And we just keep coming back to how important local partnerships are, and community involvement, and this kind of the school being a hub for the community and then students to kind of be pushing that. So it maybe, with the right kind of program, it could be like a high school prom, which is still
There we go.
awkward, but formal.
If we can move from eighth grade dance to prom and just, nobody gets hurt, I think we're good. So that's a great analogy, though. It's so true, because there is so much, like, think about it, right? Not that you're going to ask an eighth grader to go to prom, but like if an eighth grader went to prom and saw what it was, would they be like appalled? Probably. It'd be like, doesn't work that way. So I think that kind of is a great starting point for the conversation between community, businesses, and what's happening within schools and very strict structures, right? A lot of times, and we were just talking before the podcast, like I'll get a connection. Somebody wants to connect with me, and I very rarely I only have like about a half an hour, 45-minute window of my day. Believe it or not, I know people don't believe that, but that's all you have. And if that, on certain days, that you can like maybe reach out to somebody or talk to somebody. And if somebody misses that window, it's like closed, right? You're in class, so you're done. So, one of my frustrating things is when people don't understand that, but then I also understand that, right? Because in their world, it's like, oh, well, you're just probably grabbing a coffee and you can come back and, maybe jump on a call in about 20 minutes or something. But you can't in the education world. Eighth grade. And then at the prom, well, hey, man, you got the car. You can drive around during the day. You can, go grab dinner at a nice place, go to the bathroom when you want, But in an eighth grade dance, man, you got to be like whatever. They used to make you like 12 inches apart, and really no one danced anyway. It was all girls on one side and all boys on the other. Let's be honest. So
Looking at each other awkwardly, thinking like, am I going to ask them to dance? And that's kind of how it can feel if you're trying to, build a program like CAPS, or any kind of where you're trying to break the traditional school model. I really liked what Corey kind of talked about with use the phrase try out and rule out.
right.
And as a young person, and I'm around, you teach high schoolers, I've taught high schoolers, I'm still around high schoolers. They're questioning and trying to figure things out. And it's so easy to track students and to kind of put them in a bucket and and that's like the very traditional model of like, or you just take these classes, you have these experiences, and it's like more of a one size fits all. It doesn't really fit anybody, but um, it's just how the traditional school system is.
Hmm.
And it, for me personally, I do think about like my own educational pathway. It's hard to remove yourself from this because many of people listening had that very traditional model, and maybe it did set them on a track that they either currently love or are
Hmm.
questioning or have abandoned. And the wild swings that Corey mentioned and the anxiety behind that could probably have been lessened or removed by simply having more opportunities at a young age to try it out. And I think about myself, I remember saying all the time in the classroom, I said, if I could go back, I would have been an engineer. And be like, I have just learned over time that the way my brain works and the analytical nature of it and the problem solving aspect of it lends itself to that kind of that pathway.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what an engineer was when I was in high school. That wasn't a popular, for whatever reason,
Hmm.
career option that was promoted. It is now, but it wasn't like when I was going through high school. And I think about that a lot. Like it for me to go into that would require going back to school, like a lot of training and movement. And
Hmm.
it I wouldn't say it causes me anxiety, but I do and have had that kind of like what if, and it's something I never explored as a young person, so it's like I could never rule it in or rule it out or try it
Yeah.
until I was already well into my career and someone was like, you should have been an engineer. And so then I just started thinking about that and I was like, yeah, I should have.
You still can be. Just
I
saying.
know. I know. Right. I'm not like rule it out, but it feels like it would be a wild swing at this point
Right. Right.
versus had I was so locked into like the science and medical field. I wanted to be a dentist for a really long time, up
Hmm.
actually until second semester of my junior year of college.
Hmm.
I was on track to be a dentist. I'd actually applied to dental schools. Like that's how
Hmm.
far in the process I
Yeah.
was when I totally changed kind of the route. And that at the time in junior year of college felt like a big shift and a big change to go into something else and pursue public health and social work at that time, which
Hmm.
then, if we're kind of going into my little bit of my background, I did AmeriCorps actually after college to have the ability to try out. Thank goodness I did. Thank goodness I did that year. It was like
Yeah.
kind of a gap year after college because I realized me doing a year of public service and public health was not the right pathway for me. So I avoided a 3-year grad program that I had
Right.
already been accepted
Yeah.
into
Hmm.
by doing that 1 year where I was actually working with community partners in the Cedar Riverside neighborhoods of Minneapolis. And it was an
Hmm.
incredible experience. I mean, I got to work with so many different organizations and projects, and I loved a lot of them, but I realized I didn't want it to be my career pathway.
Right.
I had never really done the work in a day-to-day basis, though, in a 1-year program where I was getting paid, allowed me to try it out before investing even more time, as I was cautious at this point. But a lot of people don't like that was after college that I had that
Right.
experience.
Yeah.
So like it should have been way earlier.
Yeah.
Um
Well,
and yeah,
that's what I wanted to ask you. So, what if you had these experiences 9 through 12th grade?
I
I
don't
mean,
know where I would end
yeah,
up, right?
right.
I mean, I love being in the classroom, and I actually discovered that through that year. And I had one of the projects that I worked on was working with high school students and teaching them and in an after school type environment. But it made me realize I love science and I love working with high schoolers. And so like, how can I pair that?
Hmm.
I didn't ever have like a direct teaching science to kids experience,
Right.
but getting exposed to so many different types of organizations. I mean, I was working on a college campus, I was working at a hospital, I was working at a high school. I was working with a theater company. I was working with a community center. I was working with all these different projects.
Yeah, a lot of
So
jobs.
much so much exposure. Yeah, in
Right.
AmeriCorps, they just like really,
Yeah.
send you out there. Um, and that a lot of that work could have definitely been done in high school.
Mhm.
I mean, and so there are programs like that, and it's invaluable.
Yeah.
And I also think about this partnership with local community, community nonprofits or businesses, for
Mhm.
profits, organizations out there. And like there is untapped potential. I mean, Corey was talking about these hack days where a CEO is like, I can't solve this problem. Let's get
Right.
more heads
Hmm.
and eyes on this idea.
Yeah.
What about a hack day for a school?
Right. Yeah, 100%. I got a lot of different thought processes out of it, a lot of different ideas. Um, you know, um, and I've talked to Corey a couple times off, the podcast, and it's just like a whirlwind of like ideas, right? We ideate, and so, kind of going back to your story, and understanding, what if, I think what's happening with Gen Z and then, your Gen Alpha, um, right now, and even with my own son, is like, I am not going to pour a ton of money into something yet. They already realize what we realized after we went to college,
Yep.
right? Like or even in the middle of our college realm, like they're these two generations, for those who are like thinking about this, or understanding like policy and all this stuff, or post-secondary, look, they are waiting, not waiting, but they are seeking out what they want to do first before
Hmm.
they put money down, or even if they're going to put money down. This is a very savvy, a very monetary savvy, group of young people, because of what they've seen before them, because of the not ROI out there, on everything in college. Now, I'm not bad mouthing college or anything, but I'm just saying they are now very hesitant to spend that kind of cash. And the other thing that's happening, and Corey, we didn't really talk about this, but the turn of the economy right now, right? So they've never seen interest rates skyrocket. They've never seen, it's pretty, the job field right now, it's pretty wide open. But, it's funny when I talk to a lot of the seniors now, who have jobs at, your entry level. Well, January and February are very, very minimal, in a lot of industries. And so they get less hours, and then they start to freak out, right? So now you have a lot of these pieces coming into play. But what I like is that they are forcing change. It really isn't like they are like kind of really the bottom bread of that sandwich we were talking about in the last one, because they're the customer, right? And when you
Hmm.
when you hear a customer say, "Well, I don't know what I want to do yet. I guess I'll go here." But in the conversations in between, many of them, not all, there's a lot that are still very traditional, and it works, and that's what they're doing. But they're like, "I guess I'll go to, maybe a community college, or just get a job for a while." Like, there are more, and these are academic kids saying this as well. It's not just your kind of hands-on students. So one of the thought processes that I had going through and just listening to Corey speak, and if you haven't listened to it, go back one episode, was creating, like, we didn't really get into the embedded versus the outside of a school way that CAPS works, or a program, any program like this works. Um, but I was thinking of creating a course that's called Business Challenges. And then
Mm.
that's it. Like, we get community members and come in and do that. And maybe, we can facilitate it with CAPS, maybe not, but like that. Can you imagine going into a course in high school where you got to choose? All right, and it would be like a course catalog, but it was not a course catalog within this class. It's a
Mm.
challenge category,
Mm.
and it's with, medical, it's with, state and local government, it's with the local sandwich shop, it's whatever. I think, something like that, Caps has this, right? I'm not, they have these programs. But to start, ground up and then, see what you can do. And then, the last thing I'm kind of wrap this sandwich up, if you will,
Mhm.
is to have that, if you're administration, to understand, yes, we know you have to check the box for policy. We know you've got to, communicate with the lawmakers and make sure that all your ducks are lined up and your check boxes are checked. But also, what about that outside person that is going to be the glue from the school that is going to be able to reach out and constantly connect? So I would be a director of something, and I would be, Alli, you have this chemistry class, right? Give me 3 industries you want me to check out. I will find them for you. I will bring them into maybe, I don't know, a chemistry Friday or something like that. And I will help create this with you. I think schools are missing that person.
Mhm.
Not all of them, because there are some schools out there with that. So these are just some ideas that, and hopefully our listeners are grabbing these ideas and running with it, wherever you are in the education area. But these are just, yeah, those are just a couple of things that were top of mind after talking to Corey, because I really like the way that, what, man, we're optimizing joy. Did you hear him say that? Like, that's SEL right there. And, optimizing joy is like, hey, let's get in the playground and have fun and not feel like we're going to have to stick to something for the rest of our life.
I mean, it's so invaluable to you can't put a price tag on that level of integration with the school and the community. And I also, you're in the business world, and I was in the science world. I still
Mm-hmm.
am. And I actually love that we come at it from such different angles, because I never took a business class besides 12th grade economics, which was
Mm-hmm.
very, I mean, I enjoyed the class, but it didn't really teach. It was like very broad
Yeah,
strokes of,
macro. Yeah.
yeah, it was very macroeconomics. And it it was a disservice in my own education. And I like how Corey shared, played school, played it safe. And then it wasn't until he started his own business that he broke his own perfectionism.
Yeah.
And that is so true for, you know, so many students. They don't know what their GPA means. They just do it because they're told that's the measure of success. And then they don't necessarily have real world skills. They're
Mm-hmm.
just good at taking tests, filling out worksheets,
Right.
or reading books, maybe if they actually
Mm-hmm.
read it and don't go to Spark Notes or something. Um, and I think about one of my good friends is a pediatric dentist, and and loves it. Like, is, obviously, I think, tracked to be on that. That's not one you
Yeah.
typically get
That's
off.
yeah, that seems very specific.
Very specific. But what's interesting though is that, and I remember when I was still in the dental world and pursuing that dentist programs, and even medical programs now, have business classes,
Mm-hmm.
because you're probably going to start a practice, and nobody teaches you how to do that.
Right.
You probably didn't have any of that training, and
Mm-hmm.
it speaks to the gap between education and industry, or the business world, and why is this awkward dance? They don't talk to each other enough. And the barrier of starting a practice, I mean, my friend has figured it out at a steep cost,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
Because didn't have any of that training until it was like, okay, well, I'm starting this practice, and I'm just going to have to figure it out, and it's pull myself up on my bootstraps. And it's all those types of ideas could have been planted and pursued at such I just think they're universal skills, durable skills, whatever you want to call them,
Mm-hmm.
that any kind of industry, including a very technical field like dentistry, like the medical profession, they will teach you the technical skills.
Mm-hmm.
This is how you extract a tooth, and this is the steps. But the broader skills of being able to market and communicate and sell, really, like, and have social capital
Mhm.
and all the none of that has anything to do with a letter grade, a GPA. It
Right.
really doesn't. And so it's just like bigger picture, right? What Corey is really getting at the heart of education is like, what is the pathway?
Right.
And like, how can we set people up to be successful and try out as much as possible when you're young and you have the time, right? So you don't
Hmm.
like get pigeonholed, because at some point your time and your attention are I mean, they're always valuable, but you like there's like a point in life where you really realize like how valuable they are.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like
Yes.
it, like somebody missing that window for you is in your day is like it's frustrating personally, because it's like you understand the value of your time and attention.
Right.
And but when you're young, you're just like exploring and you really don't know like all of
Hmm.
these opportunities. Like, I mean, that year of AmeriCorps, I had no idea some of these kinds of organizations and businesses even were happening.
You're
Like,
right.
no clue. You right, you don't know what you don't
Hmm.
know. And I think about myself as a high school student and so many of my peers, and we're like,
Hmm.
why did I play it safe in high school? Because nobody told me how challenging it would be to navigate if I didn't.
Hmm.
Like, or if I took these risks, because I was basically encouraged to play it safe and go
Hmm.
for the grade and not take any academic risks, or but really life risks. And
Right.
then the price tag is higher
Hmm.
as you are an adult, or you just really you have this anxiety and you cannot switch because you've never done anything but check the box, get the grade. Like,
Hmm.
and so there's like a lot more layers to what Corey is saying, and like the type of programming that he's building and other people are building that speaks to like a totally different way to like integrate education and like beyond into the world and
Right.
life.
This connects a lot of our guests, right? So we started with Don Wettrick, who is very much like Corey, doing some similar things, just with hands-on, having students get outside of a classroom, even outside of the state and even outside of the country, to do things. And then, we went into a little bit of Pam, right? Talking about what you just described there is maybe part of the reason why we were as we were in school, was because there's so much that we had blinders on, right? You are looking at, maybe you're not even looking at GPA, but your time is so like, you have 8 periods a day, and then you got to go to volleyball, and then you got to go to a club, and then you got to, whatever. So that's one thing. And then, we went to Josh, right? Talking about now you got all these other distractions over here that are people are like, be this, be that, be this, but there's no experience. It's just you're watching it, right? And then, now you have also we went to a Kaminsky, the tutor, right? And she's talking about, how can I help people, move, in different ways. But I would also say there might be something here for and I've done this before, but a career tutor earlier, right? So if you're a parent, or if you're an educator right now and you see this stuff, go check out, Joan's stuff, because we were talking about Joanne's stuff, because we were talking about, like, if you want a tutor, there's a market gap here, right? A career tutor. So that's something there as well. And then we get to Corey, who's like, yeah, these are the capstone, the caps of what we can do here. But all the way through this, if you go back, and I love the fact that you go back to your own, your experiences, because as an entrepreneur teacher, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to empathize in what's going through the minds of the customers. It was interesting just the past week, as we are, going through our entrepreneurship class. I have the students take a blank sheet of paper, and I like complain, like write it out there. And I got that from Don Wettrick, by the way, like complain, you guys can complain about everything. And then they complained about having to write. But anyway, so But one kid just put school, and I'm like, tell me about school. Like, you have to kind of prod it. He's like, I just don't like school. I'm like, why? What is it about school? It's too long. Okay, so the day's too long, or is it too long that you're in school or whatever? He's like, it's too long that I'm in here. I'm like, okay, how many credits do we need to graduate? 25. Okay, so you want to solve the problem of how can I get to 25 credits the fastest? And he's like, oh, yes, So there you go, right? But then how can we put experiences in there at a younger age? I think that's what we're looking at, is not necessarily like, okay, this kid's a math whiz, they're going to be a an engineer, and then we're going to just dunk them into a track, okay? And we talked about this right before the podcast, but I am not like, if and there's a amount of students, it's a lower percentage of students that know, right, what they want to do, right? My colleague's daughter knew she wanted to be a teacher. She went that route, and she's a teacher today in her mid-20s, right? Got 4 years under her belt, loves it. Um, However, once we start putting kids in tracks and then they start to figure out maybe they don't want that, we sometimes don't allow those off ramps that Corey was talking about. And that might not be the person, or it might be the system itself. And from what I've found is sometimes there is a golden nugget from a state or a grant if a kid goes on a track, or so many kids, so there's extra monies for that. So there might be persuasion there to keep a young person on a track that they may not want. But that's why I love the fact that Corey was talking about on ramp and off ramp, because that needs to be built in. So I know I went on a rant there, but hey, you know
But
what? This is
it does.
disrupting.
Of course, we do need easy on and off ramps.
Yeah.
The picture that Corey painted with tracking students in like based in 8th grade, and then that's going to determine which high school you go to, and
Right.
it could be
Yeah.
across town.
Yeah.
I mean, I am prolifically against that.
Hmm. Hmm.
I because it you're already at an extremely formidable age,
Yeah.
and if you pigeonhole someone too early, not only could it lead them to a lot of anxiety just based off of like not knowing what else they could have done, like you could
Hmm.
send them on a track that then they want to have like a wild swing on. But it's like these students don't have anything else to kind of base this off, and
Yeah.
they're at a time where their social identity and experiences are really, really high.
Hmm.
And so, locking someone into having to make that choice of like, well, do I switch my friend group or do I switch where I'm going to school? I don't think should be a choice a student has to make within a same school district.
Right.
I think that kind of model, it I would not advocate for that type of model
Right.
in particular. Maybe it works in certain places. In my mind, like I want kind of, especially as students get to the 11th and 12th grade year,
Hmm.
you know, more and more opportunities to experience the world outside of the classroom, and connecting it back to the learning. I mean, I think that could be done at all levels,
Yeah.
but when people are starting to make choices in young adulthood, you want it to be based in something other than theoretical,
Hmm.
like some kind of experience outside of the classroom walls. And I know for myself, and I went to a good high school, had a great experience, but I do look back and I think, I was limited in the exposure to industry and
Right.
ideas of what I could do, like outside of like the very stereotypical things that people consider, like doctor,
Mhm.
lawyer,
Yeah.
I don't know, flight attendant,
Hmm.
dentist, teacher, those are ones that are like get oftentimes promoted.
Right.
And I I think back to this field trip that I did when I was teaching, and it was to this water treatment plant. And the industry people were like, nobody grows up saying they want to work at a water treatment plant. Like it's just not high on like a list.
Yep.
And they actually, what I learned from this, besides just the cool chemistry that goes behind like the water treatment facility, was that they have in an entire area in their industry that's just for recruiting and
Hmm.
training people, because like people don't know about this industry, and they have an aging workforce that they need to replace. And so this is in a lot of industries like that. People need their water treated and they need people to run those facilities. Not only will they, like pay for whatever their 8 week, 12 week, couple month training, at like a very good rate, but the benefits and everything, I mean, just are incredible. But it's the only way they can like bring people into that area,
Right.
because most of where they spend their money is trying to get people to work for them.
Hmm.
Right? Like
Right.
that's
Right.
a reality. Can you picture, like, I mean, every local district has some kind of water treatment facility,
Right.
unless you're in like super rural and everyone's on wells. Okay,
Right.
like this is a
But
very
even
common.
that, digging a well, I mean, what the heck? That's a, yeah.
Exactly. Think of that partnership alone. The
Hmm.
electric company, the local, like, think of all of the things that even just make the lights turn on in a
Hmm.
building, right? All of those industries need people, because we've
Right.
talked to the CTE and just like the trades
Hmm.
type career paths. And there's a huge opportunity for those, for kids,
Hmm.
young people, to explore those careers and then see how they could help their local community. That I don't think is being talked about enough. But like imagine any type of program where you could just try it out. And
Right.
yeah, there's going to be the red tape, and we've gone down that road. But like it's worth it, because you're going to get people exposed at a
Hmm.
formidable age to industries they would otherwise have no idea
Right.
exist.
Yeah. You don't know what you don't know. And I think, first we can move it to a freshman dance, right? We'll go from eighth grade to freshman to round this thing out, right? But to make those small moves, and the one thing that I did like, because Corey was talking about, was, if you're a teacher, right? And for me, it's a little. I mean, I think I lend myself to it. It's a business teacher, but what you just described there as a chemistry teacher going into water treatment, I wish my chemistry teacher in high school did that. Like, right? Um, because that would have connected it a little bit more. I mean, I really did enjoy like the experiments we did, but like to really do that and to go places. And I think that's the next part, to move the dance a little bit more near the prom, if you will. It's really about how do we find ways to do this? How do we get students involved outside of the school, where they go places, and how can we streamline these things rather than just paper them all the way down. So again, if you're obviously, if you're an educator, I know I can hear them saying it right now, but guys, like, I can't get a bus to go here, or I have to put in my field trip forms 7 years in advance. I get that, right? But can we use technology? First off, what can you control? Can we do a live interview where somebody's carrying their camera around? Who knows, right? Start there. However, if you are an administrator, go look at your processes, right? What is hindering you, hindering your educators, and most importantly, hindering the students from these experiences, right? And then we'll go all the way back to the law firms, right? You got to be curious and understand, okay, where are the blockers at, and what can we do legally, and what can't we do? And then we have a starting point to start there. Look, man, I know administrators are overwhelmed right now. There are kids hanging out in bathrooms, not showing up to schools, all different kinds of things going on. But try one thing, right? And it doesn't have to be business. It doesn't have to be chemistry. It can be anything, which that's what excites me, right? And that's, I guess, the entrepreneur in both of us, right? It's when you see those challenges, going back to Don Wentrick, and you see the opportunities, kind of like what Corey is talking about, really kind of having the students kind of guide you by listening to them. I think you have a lot of small changes that can start happening. And I really like that podcast. It gave me a lot of ideas, a lot of, I've got a page full of notes down here. And I hope our listeners do too, because this is what it's all about. Like, what are the small changes that you can control and try to play around with? And going back to the final three words, it was awareness, what was it, permission, and time, right? Corey said those three things. And those are key, right? So go for it. I mean, they're not going to fire you. There's no more teachers out there.
Now is the time.
Yeah, right. What are your final thoughts, Alli?
I think a really good final thought is, I know growing up, I thought myself, I labeled myself as I'm not a business person, right? And I know so many, that's actually not common label as people like, I'm not a math person. I'm not a science person.
Right.
I'm not a history person, like they'll base it off of their school experience. And having done the podcast now and also my experiences outside of the classroom in the last, almost 2 years since leaving, is that there's really no basis for those types of statements if you don't experience them in the real world. Maybe you weren't a math person for chugging algebra problems and geometry proofs, and maybe you weren't a science person because it just didn't connect you. But I know, even just in teaching a science-based course to musicians essentially and artists, and it's a very much a school that is not a majority of STEM majors, that those students come off of the class thinking, I can do science for the first time in my life. And I think there's just so much more opportunity to put learning in a real maker space that can remove those labels that may stay with you for a really long time, if not removed early. And it's all from just getting kids to experience that field, that mode, that course of study in an applicable way rather than a textbook theoretical experience.
Yeah. We're going to cap that right there. See, the CAPS Network. Again, go back and listen to it, the podcast right before this one, and check out yourcapsnetwork.org. And then just reach out to us. Any more, a lot of topics that are out there. We have a couple more interesting things coming up. Ergonomics, building. How do we make things feel better for learners and educators in general? We're going to have some great topics coming up around that. We got a lot coming up, so hang out with us. Thank you so much for Alli Privitt. I'm Peter Hostrawser, for hanging out with us here on the Disrupt Education Podcast. Until next time, keep disrupting. We'll see you later. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Disrupt Education Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Are you ready to disrupt the educational arena you're a part of? For more ways to get involved in the work we do here at Disrupt Education, check us out at disrupteducation.co or find us on LinkedIn at Peter Hostrawser or Alli Privitt.
Our mission here is to help facilitate and amplify changes in the educational system through local initiatives and help you scale them into community movements. Our building network of disruptors in education are working to move beyond scores and grades as the only measure for student learning. If your school district, college, campus, or organization is looking for facilitators of this work, reach out on our website or social media.
And if you have any thoughts or feedback on this week's episode or any episode, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, taking risks, and most importantly, disrupting education.